It is a binding of mystical answers. The latter helps to focus this, both in ritual for that which is Druidess and that which is achieved as Druid. For the process of thought, the mystery of thought, are all a part of the invisible waves in the essence of existence. And these waves can teach, or they can blind. It is the nature of that which is chosen to see, to learn which is which. It is essential that the Druid self, either in union or in focus, learns how to harness this divinational education, for in it is the passage known as time. Amidst the man, or death. Winter be thy fate, forgotten on thy plain, for I will rest forever here, as long as the bell of self appear. This is the message that death gave to those who swept the secret of the gypsy ladder, because his job is not to end or begin, but to make accounting of a person's life. And if you remember the line, the service to life and death becomes yours. The Druid way of thinking is the preservation of both. What is meant by this? In life, it is to extend it, whereby it would be taken away so easily, while in death is to expose the weak points that led one into the ignorance of creating their own. Not to cheat death, but merely not to be on its course. For the cycle of life will continue no matter what. That includes death. But those who befriend the services run a better chance of belonging outside than within. For it's easy to deny the power of existence, but to a Druid we harness it. Death himself, or themselves, do not play favorites. They do not care, they do not reason. They do, however, listen. And if one is good at bargaining, can kind of switch the road, because you're not changing its direction, you're allowing it to allow you to change another's. They may or may not change it back with or without your knowledge. But you stayed your course, you served your art, and you stood amidst the man. The Willow's Old Storybook. Then thee, I, a simple little tree, with the secrets of time set by three. Then thee I, who knows all things, which is of the willow, call to thee. We are soft, strong, and firm, changing by the day, left out to burn. Then thee I, along great things, small but simple, a willow-wishing way. In the Druid design, certain branches or twigs are used to represent different levels of the willow's growth. For the lesser of which is ravenwood, to the great that is oak. The willow would be our keeper, like the hands of a clock. For each would share a skill, as thus we stood, and this is the garden from which the stone Druid grows. It is our nature to use both forest and river, for the forest is air and the river water. But these are the middle, not the beginning or the end. The beginning is the plains, the end is the ocean. The 10 stories of the being. Fire and sky. Man was born a stone. He was every piece of planet Earth. From this was born a heart. It dripped with fiery blood, and though the trees and water felt weak, among it stirred in a kind of spiral fashion as it dripped, which caught fire to the land and produced these shadows. These shadows of fire that consumed everything it touched, except every one of the petrified woods. These powerful trees and limbs fought back to contain the fire and held the fire at bay until the night set in. The fire, growing in strength, started to feed even on the indestructible tree. But then the moon shone and shadowed the fire whole. There began an empty circle burnt into the ground and set open in space that fought back the air that created a home for this person to lay and be consumed by the woods, so that night and day were even, and all but the man's face started to glow, as if the limbs of his body expanded until they reached every thought of that area created by tree, created by air, created by the earth. This man stood awoken as a shadow that reached into the heavens and bored out two sharp eyes that set the man back to the earth to look upon him with these eyes and grant him immortality. A shadow born from fire, a metal blade from earth. The torch and man. Man looked up from the darkness, reached out with a silver blade that caught fire in the moonlight, and found himself on the other side of time, looking back upon the world only to see it swallowed in darkness. He cries out, "Why?" He surrenders himself to the night, becomes covered in leaves and thorny versions of ivy. It starts raking across his skin, growing tighter and tighter as it continues to bleed him out and strangle him whole. He's then entered into a cavern on which was written many ancient names, and in front of all these names were a torch sitting on a table. He grabs the torch and the names get set on fire. As they get burned into his flesh, he doesn't yell or cry because they didn't make any pain, only the searing sounds of the imprinting of it. He turns cold and blue as if like ice. The wind does howl, as if to start a winter within a winter. Death surrounds him, blending him into nothingness. He is fearful but complete. He hears whispers of ancient voices asking him, "Why?" Seeing a wall with his name etched within, he begins to read a language he never knew, strengthening his valor. He dreams as if the cavern was open and the light was shining in. He reaches for the light, but is burned by a heavy fire, a fire that does not exist, but yet still leaves a mark. He is afraid to walk in, knowing he might disappear, but a woman's voice beckons him to come to her aid. He dares to brave the invisible fire, only to see himself vanish and be reborn as smoke drifting over ancient stones, carried amongst the breeze and throngs and ventures. He sees himself resting on top of a hill or mound. As time begins to spin, the earth does call him back, and he becomes flesh again. The egg man made of stone. Trust not the darkness, trust not the light, trust not the temptation of the flesh, and trust not the teachers of the blight, for they are a remnant of the egg, a secret as old as time itself. We are to be the teachers, that which is made of standing stone, watches over humanity, guides for eternity, for we are what keeps the cold and the hot in check. Darkness may swallow us, but it will never own what is to be. Like children at play, like summer of hot and dew, like flowers among a great open garden, silently we are perched, teachers of the invisible mind, founders of the emptiness of the land, marked and marred by the seasons, for as stone do we stand, laying waste to an empty soul to feel it, with a standing circle round, family reborn, birth received, and messages of soul in sight, and that which is of a value in plight. Walk with me hand in hand, for it is the toll where we stand, our home, our foundation, our secret beyond the stars, whispering to the darkness, for the skim we are brought in part. Drag your lost virtue, tie it to a tree, a rope forgotten memory, goddess one will see. The man made of stone, fire consumed by light, so bright they brought about a new day. It struggled to free itself from the grip of the light, but the light would not give in. It hungered for what one did not know. It saw all things, both big and small. Time to it as fire was nothing. Time to it was just a memory, until the death shook and cracked in two, it separating the light and fire, and the fire diminished. A stone, a powerful slab, rose up from the earth, only to challenge the light. The light etched over 1,000,000 years little markings on this object. The stone, realizing these markings, called them out in a secrecy and silence, and broke the earth open to send more, and more stones up, thrusting up into the sky. The light tried to etch these new stones, but could not. These new stones had a coating of fire and grass of a meticulous state, covered the stones, feeding on this fire, but not touching the light. It grew into a shape of an animal, until it stood on its own as if a stone, but was a grass-like object. Gadenmore, this creature, started to devour the light, sucking it clearly from the air until nightfall, at which the moon had arrived and cast its focus on the Gaden. Bear the well from the grip of darkness to the circle's swell. Fire has made in thee a covering of shadow, as one can see. But you are not owned by earth to the stones. A broken earthly call to thee, O great Engi, to know thy place among the skim of three. Heart by victims, pledge thy virtue. Stand in protection, woodland well, for the secret of the living earth you swell. I call to thee, O Gaden, known fire consumed like struggling bestowed, to be the marker which all secret knights call to and serve, and great for valor and virtue. Pex, Penditoli, and de Angle, nos gratis, vos salva, norm vet. The sky made of ice. Backward set in time, when the world was half its size, the universe bled an eye that was cold as night in winter fine. For this was the awaiting sky, a secret teacher to the light from which no sun can hide. Thou art thou, Creator's creation, thou art air and shadow. From this great beginning, the teacher's master stone fell from the heaven, which separated two worlds from each other and began the dawn of another venturing world to be. Nature then fell before thee, and separated into the elements as are, to begin the three kingdoms of answers in the temples that hold their truths. All of heaven was awakened, but hidden before a sleeping dreamer. Kingdoms shook before its might. A great stone tore through the heavens, made its mark, created a memory, created a lake for immortality. Brushes from green trees that were in sight created a makeshift circle which divided day and night. The skies lit up in fingertips, as if to start a new game at play, to bring forth the wise and the willing to grow beyond their measured path. As they tried to measure the stone that was heaven sent, time began a memory, and a temple was born and fell to rest. Kingdoms between kingdoms started wars with their neighbors, all to fight for reason in a madness created by a circle. Unknown blood filled the land and became as empty as a barrel of wine that dried into the ground and created blight. Ashes rose up from the ground as if smoky and fog like, and choked those who dared venture close. It was